Just then, as Jeroboam was standing by the altar to burn incense, a man of God came from Yehuda directed to Bet-El by a word from Adonai. And by the word from Adonai he cried out against the altar, "Altar, altar, here is what Adonai says. A son will be born to the house of David. His name will be Yoshayahu, Josiah. And on you he will bear a sacrifice, the Kohanim, the high places who burn incense on you. They will burn human bones on you." That same day he also gave a sign. "Here is the sign which Adonai has decreed. The altar will be split apart. The ashes on it will be scattered about." When the king heard what the man of God said, how he denounced the altar of Bet-El, Jeroboam took his hand away from the altar and says, "Seize him!" But his hand, the one he had stretched out against him, shriveled up, so that he could not draw it back to himself. After the altar was split apart and the ashes scattered from the altar according to the sign which the man of God had given by the word of Adonai, the king then responded to the man of God. "Ask now the favor of Adonai your God," he said, "and pray for me, that my hand will be restored to me." The man of God prayed to Adonai, and the king's hand was restored to him and became as it was before. The king then said to the man of God, "Come home with me and refresh yourself, and I will give you a reward." But the man of God replied to the king, "Even if you give me half your household, I will not accept your hospitality, nor will I eat food or drink water in this place, for this is the order I received through the word of Adonai. Don't eat food or drink water, and don't return to the road which you took when you came." So he went another way and did not return by the road which he had come to Bet-El. Now there lived an old prophet in Bet-El, and one of his sons came and told him all the things the man of God had done that day in Bet-El. Also, they told the father what he had said to the king. Their father asked them, "Which way did he go?" For his sons had seen the road the man of God from Yehuda had taken. He then said to his sons, "Saddle the donkey for me." So he saddled the donkey for him, and, riding on it, he went after the man of God. He found him sitting under a pistachio tree and said to him, "Are you the man of God who came from Yehuda?" He answered, "I am." And he said to him, "Come home with me and eat some food." He replied, "I cannot return with you or partake of your hospitality, nor will I eat food or drink water with you in this place, because it was said to me by the word of Adonai, you are not to eat food or drink water there, and you are not to go back by the way you came." The other said to him, "I too am a prophet, just like you, and an angel spoke to me by the word of Adonai and said, 'Bring him back with you to your house so that he can eat food and drink water.' But he was lying to him. So we went back with him and did not eat food and drink water in the house. He did eat food and drink water in the house, and they were sitting at the table, and the word of Adonai came to the prophet who had brought him back. He cried to the man of God who had come from Yehuda, "Here is what Adonai says. Since you rebelled against the word of Adonai and did not obey the mitzvot Adonai your God gave you, but came back and ate food and drank water in the place where he warned you not to eat food or drink water, your corpse will not arrive at the tomb of your ancestors." After he had eaten food and drunk, he saddled the donkey for the prophet he had brought back. But after he had gone, a lion encountered the man of God on the road and killed him. His corpse lay there in the road, with the donkey and the lion standing next to it. In time, people passed by and saw the corpse lying on the road with the lion standing next to it, and they came and told about it in the city where the old prophet lived. When the prophet who had brought him back from the road heard about it, he said, "It is the man of God who rebelled against the word of Adonai. This is why Adonai handed him over to the lion to tear him to pieces and kill him, in keeping with the word of Adonai spoke to him. To his sons he said, "Saddle the donkey for me," and they saddled it. He went and found his corpse lying on the road, with the donkey and the lion standing next to the corpse. The lion had neither eaten the corpse nor attacked the donkey. The prophet picked up the corpse of the man of God, laid it on the donkey, and brought it back to the city where he lived to mourn and bury him. He laid the corpse in his own burial cave, and they mourned him. "Oh, my brother!" After burying him, he said to his sons, "When I die, put me in the burial cave where the man of God is buried. Lay my bones next to his bones. For the thing he cried by the word of Adonai against the altar of Beit El and against all the temples of the high places near the cities of Shamron will surely happen." After this, Yerovam did not turn back from his evil way, but continued appointing Kohanim to the high places from all the people. He consecrated anyone who wanted to be Kohen of the high places. This brought sin to the house of Yerovam that would eventually cut it off and destroy it from the face of the earth. At this time, Aviah, the son of Yerovam, fell ill. Yerovam said to his wife, "Please come and disguise yourself so that you won't be recognized as Yerovam's wife. Go to Shiloh. Achiah, the prophet, is there, the one who said that I will be king over these people. Take with you 10 loaves of bread, some cakes, and a jug of honey, and go to him. He will tell you what will happen to the boy." Yerovam's wife did this. She set out, went to Shiloh, and arrived at the house of Achiah. Now Achiah could not see because his eyes were dim with age. Adonai had told Achiah, "Yerovam's wife is on her way to you and to ask you about her son who is ill. You are to tell her thus and thus. Moreover, when she comes, she will be pretending she is another woman." When Achiah heard the sound of her feet, she came in the door, and he said, "Enter, wife of Yerovam. Why pretend you are someone else? I have been given bad news for you. Go tell Yerovam that this is what Adonai says. I raised you up from among the people, made you prince over my people Israel, tore the kingdom away from the dynasty of David and gave it to you. In spite of this, you have not been like my servant David, who obeyed my mitzvot and followed me with all his heart, so that he could do only what I regarded as right. Rather, you have committed more evil than anyone before you. You went and made other gods for yourself and images cast of metal to make me angry. But me you shoved behind your back. Therefore, I will now bring disaster on the house of Yerovam, and I will cut off every male of Yerovam's line, whether a slave or free in Israel. I will sweep away the house of Yerovam as completely as when someone sweeps away dung until it's all gone. If someone from the line of Yerovam dies in the city, the dogs will eat him. If he dies in the countryside, the vultures will eat him. For Adonai has said it. So go up, go home. So get up, go home. When your feet enter the city, the boy will die. All Israel will mourn him, and they will bury him. He is the only one of Yerovam's line who will lie in a grave, because he alone in the house of Yerovam has in him an element of good towards Adonai, the God of Israel. Moreover, Adonai will raise up for himself a king over Israel. At the time will cut off the house of Yerovam. And what will God do now? Adonai will strike until he shakes like a reed in the water. He will uproot Israel from the good land which he gave to their ancestors and scatter them beyond the Euphrates River, because they made sacred poles for themselves, thus making Adonai angry. He will give up on Israel because of the sins of Yerovam, which he committed himself, and with which he made Israel sin as well. Yerovam's wife got up, left, and went to Tirzah. The moment she reached the threshing of the house, the boy died. All Israel buried him and mourned him, in keeping with the word of Adonai spoken through his servant Achiah the prophet. Other activities of Yerovam, how he fought and how he ruled, are recorded in the annals of kings of Israel. Jeroboam's reign lasted 22 years, then he slept with his ancestors, and Nadab, his son, became king in his place. Jeroboam, the son of Shlomo, was reigning in Yehuda. Yechavim, the son of Shlomo, was reigning in Yehuda. Yechavim was 41 years old when he began to rule. He ruled 17 years in Jerusalem. The city Adonai had chosen from all the tribes of Israel to bear his name, his mother's name, was Naamah the Ammonite. Yehuda did what was evil from Adonai's perspective. They made him angry because of their sins, which were worse than any their ancestors had committed. For they erected high places, standing stones, and sacred poles on every high hill and under every green tree. Also, there were male and female cult prostitutes in the land attached with these shrines, doing all disgusting things which the nations did that Adonai had expelled ahead of the people of Israel. In the 5th year of the king Rehavim, Shishak, king of Egypt, attacked Jerusalem. He took the treasures of the house of Adonai and the treasures in the royal palace. He took everything, including all the gold shields Shlomo had made. To replace them, King Rehavim made shields of bronze. When he entrusted the commanders of the contingent guarding the gate of the royal palace, whenever the king went to the house of Adonai, the guard would get the shields. Later, they would return them to the guard room. Other activities of Rehavim and all his accomplishments are recorded in the annals of the kings of Yehuda. But there was continual war between Rehavim and Yerovam. Rehavim slept with his ancestors and was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. His mother's name was Naamah the Ammonite. Then Avayim, his son, became king in his place. It was in the 18th year, the king Yerovam, the son of Nevat, that Avayim began his reign over Yehuda. He ruled 3 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Avshalom. He committed all the sins his father had committed before him. He was not wholehearted with Adonai his God, as David his forefather had been. Nevertheless, for David's sake, Adonai his God gave him a lamp burning in Jerusalem by establishing his son after him and making Jerusalem secure. For David had done what was right from Adonai's perspective. He had not turned away from anything he ordered him to do as long as he lived, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. There was war between Rehavim and Yerovim as long as he lived. Other activities of Avayim and all the accomplishments are recorded in the annals of the kings of Yehuda. But there was war between Avayim and Yerovim. Aviyam slept with his ancestors, and they buried him in the city of David. Then Asa, his son, became king in his place. It was in the 20th year of Yerovam, king of Israel, that Asa began to reign over Yehuda. He ruled 41 years in Jerusalem. His grandmother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Avshalom. Asa did what was right from Adonai's perspective, from the perspective of Adonai, as David, his ancestor, had done. He rid the land of cult prostitution and removed all the idols his ancestors had made. He also deposed Maacah from her position as queen mother because she had made a disgusting image as an Asherah. Asa cut down this image of her and burned it in the Vadi Kidron. But the high places were not removed. Nevertheless, Asa was wholehearted with Adonai throughout his life. He brought into the house of Adonai all the articles his father had consecrated, also the things he himself had consecrated, silver, gold, and utensils. But there was war between Asa and Baasha, king of Israel, as long as they both lived. Baasha attacked Yehuda, and he fortified Ramah to prevent anyone leaving or entering the territory of Asa, king of Yehuda. Then Asa took all the silver and gold left among the treasures of the house of Adonai and among the treasures of the royal palace, and entrusting them to his servants, King Asa set them to Ben-Hadad, the son of Tavarraman, the son of Hezion, king of Aram, who lived in Damascus, with this message: "There is a covenant between me and you, which exists already between my father and your father. Here, I am sending you a present of silver and gold. Go, break your covenant with Baasha, king of Israel, so that he will leave me alone. Ben-Hadad did as King Asa asked. He sent the commanders of his army against the cities of Israel, attacking Ijon, Dan, Evel, Beath-Makkah, and all Kinroth in the land of Naphtali. As soon as Baasha heard of it, he stopped building Ramah and stayed in Tirzah. King Asa then issued a proclamation requiring every man in Yehuda, with no exception, to come and carry off the stones timber of Baasha had used to fortify Ramah. With them, King Asa fortified Geva of Benjamin and Mitzpah. The other activities of Asa, all his power, all his accomplishments of the city he fortified, and are recorded in the annals of the kings of Yehuda. But in his old age, he suffered from a disease in his legs. Asa slept with his ancestors and was buried with his ancestors in the city of David, his ancestor. Then Jehoshaphat, his son, became king in his place. It was the 2nd year of Asa, king of Yehuda, that Nadab, the son of Jeroboam, began his reign over Israel, and he ruled Israel 2 years. He did what was evil from Adonai's perspective, following the example of his father and sin through which he had made Israel sin. Baasha, the son of Ekiah, from the descendants of Yisachar, conspired against him, and Baasha attacked him at Gibeton, which belonged to the Plishtim. For at the time of Nadab and all Israel were besieging Gibeton. It was in the 3rd year of Asa, king of Yehuda, that Baasha killed Nadab and became king in his place. As soon as he had become king, he killed off the entire house of Jeroboam, destroying every living soul and leaving not one survivor. This was in keeping with what Yehuda had said throughout his servant Achiah from Shiloh. It was the punishment for the sins of Jeroboam had committed all through which he had made Israel sin, thereby angering Adonai, the God of Israel. Other activities of Nadab and all his accomplishments are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. There was war between Asa and Baasha, king of Israel, as long as they both lived. It was in the 3rd year of Asa, king of Yehuda, that Baasha, the son of Achiah, began his reign over Israel in Tirzah, and his rule lasted 24 years. He did what was wrong from Adonai's perspective, following the example of Jeroboam and committing sin through which he had made Israel sin. The word of Adonai came to Yehu, the son of Hanani, against Baasha. I raised you up out of the dust and made you prince over my people Israel. But you have lived in the same way as Jeroboam and caused my people Israel to sin, so that their sinning has made me angry. Therefore I will sweep away Baasha and his house completely. I will make your house like the house of Jeroboam and the son of Nevat. Someone from the line of Baasha dies in the city, the dogs will eat him. If he dies in the countryside, the vultures will eat him. Other activities of Baasha, his accomplishments and his power, are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. Baasha slept with his ancestors, and Elah, his son, became king in his place. Through the prophet Yehu, the son of Hanani, the word of Adonai was proclaimed against Baasha in the house of both, in his house, and both because he did much evil from Adonai's perspective, angering him in his actions and becoming like the house of Jeroboam, and because he killed Nadab. It was in the 26th year of Asa, king of Yehuda, that Elah, the son of Baasha, began his reign over all Israel in Tirzah. And he ruled for 2 years. His servant Zimri, commander of the half of the chariots, plotted against him. Finally, one time when Elah was in Tirzah, drinking himself senseless in the house of Arza, administrator of the palace of Tirzah, Zimri entered, struck him down, and killed him. This was in the 27th year of Asa, king of Yehuda. Zimri then took Elah's place as king. At the beginning of his reign, as soon as he took over the throne, he killed off the entire house of Baasha. He left not a single male, neither all his relatives nor of his friends. Thus Zimri eliminated all the house of Baasha in keeping with the word of Adonai spoken against Baasha through Yehu the prophet. This word had been spoken because of all Baasha's sins and the sins of Elah his son, which they committed and which they had made Israel sin, thereby angering Adonai, the God of Israel, with their worthless idols. Other activities of Elah and all his accomplishments are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. It was in the 27th year of Asa, king of Yehudah, that Zimri ruled for 7 days in Tirzah. At that time, the army was besieging Gibton, which belonged to the Plishtim. The troops of their camp heard it, said that Zimri had plotted and killed the king, whereby that same day there in the camp all Israel made Omri commander of the army king over Israel. Omri and all Israel with him withdrew from Gibton and besieged Tirzah. When Zimri saw that the city had been captured, he went into the citadel of the royal palace and burned down the royal palace over him so that he died. This came about because of the sins he committed doing what is evil from Adonai's perspective, and living in Yerovam had lived, and sinning by making Israel sin. Other activities of Zimri and his conspiracy are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. At this point, the people of Israel divided into 2 factions. Half of the people went after Tivni, the son of Ganat, to make him king, while the other half followed Omri. But the faction supporting Omri won out over that of Tivni, the son of Ganat. So Tivni died, and Omri became king. It was in the 31st year of Asa, king of Yehudah, that Omri began his reign over Israel. He ruled for 12 years, 6 months, 6 of them in Tirzah. He brought Mount Shimron from the Shamir for 132 pounds of silver. On the mountain he built a city, which he named Shimron, after Shamir, who had owned the mountain. Omri did what was evil from Adonai's perspective, outdoing all his predecessors in wickedness, for he lived entirely in the manner of Yerovam, the son of Nevat, committing the sins which he made Israel sin, thereby angering Adonai, the God of Israel, with their worthless idols. Other activities of Omri and the power he demonstrated are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. Then Omri slept with his ancestors and was buried in Shimron, and Achav, his son, became king in his place. It was in the 38th year of Asa, king of Yehudah, that Achav, the son of Omri, began his rule over Israel. Achav, the son of Omri, ruled 22 years over Israel in Shimron. Achav, the son of Omri, did what was evil from Adonai's perspective, outdoing all his predecessors in wickedness. But then, as if it had been a trifling thing for him to commit the sins of Yerovam, the son of Nevat, he took as his wife Jezebel, the daughter of Itbaal, king of Zidonim, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. He erected an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Shimron. Achav also set up Asherah. Indeed, Achav did more to anger Adonai, the God of Israel, than all the other kings of Israel preceding him. It was during his time that Hiel of Beit El rebuilt Jericho. He laid its foundation at the cost of the firstborn son of Ephraim and erected its gates at the cost of his youngest son, Segub. This was in keeping with the word of Adonai spoken through Yehoshua, the son of Nun.